So, good afternoon. Sorry. Okay. You want to upload your stuff? Yeah. Okay. We will start now the session on resilience. And the first speaker is Chandra Sekar, who is professor at Colorado State University of Fort Collins. And he will speak about the experiment around Dallas-Fort Worth. There is an urban radar network and enhancing resilience in the presence of floods, tornadoes, hail, and high winds. That's all? No other disaster?
Only thing missing is earthquake.
Okay. Okay, so please, Chandra, if you can present your lecture.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to come and give this talk at EGU. And let's see if you have a pointer. How do we move up and down? Oh, okay, okay. And so this is, so let me step back a little bit and explain what's the context of this. This Dallas-Fort Worth urban network happened out of, we had a huge research project in the US called CASA, which is Center for Collaborative Adaptive Sensing of the Atmosphere. That's a project funded by National Science Foundation. It's typically one of the very few projects that's funded for 10 years. It's very rarely that NSF funds any projects for 10 years. But this idea of this project is to completely change the paradigm. But then once the research phase of the project is over, it's to work on the translational phase of the project, and that's what this is all about, and where we are really trying to see a lot of the research we did is true. So I will just describe the CASA concept and then the Dallas-Fort Worth Urban Demonstration Network, and then some sample observations, and then observations of flood, tornadoes, high winds, and hail. That's a fancy term, academic term is hydrometeor classification. Okay, why is this focus on urban regions? It's two phases of this focus is on urban region. The first part is there are two global trends. One is urbanization, then the second one is climate change. And these have significantly changed the level of risk in numerous countries. And this is not my statement. This is a World Risk Report. Just by itself, urbanization itself is sufficient to create problems. But then on the top of it, you add issues of climate change, then these things work against each other. Now, let's go back in time. I was part of many studies by the US National Academy, and saw all these things. There were different studies done looking at technologies that how we keep up. These studies were done more than 10 years ago. And then how to have observing systems so that we constantly keep watch on what is going on so that we can protect ourselves better for the changing environment. So you can see that these are all reports that came out of the National Academy, and then the net result was this project. Now, US has a very large observing system that protects people, and that is the key word is protecting lives and property from the environmental impact. And that set of system is, the observing system is what is called as NEXRAD, or National Weather Service WSR 88D radar systems. This was a huge procurement program running into billions of dollars, and it has got about 150 radars. And one of the issues with this technology is all these observing systems came as what we call as hand-me-down technology from military. People never designed radars to study rainfall first. First, it was designed to shoot down airplanes. And then once it's all paid for, and then things are all working, then they go, okay, how can we use the same technology to monitor severe storms. So these were not fundamentally designed. So if you look at it, this was the coverage diagram that was shown to the Congress, US Congress, in terms of how much of US will be covered. But, and this is all, but if you think about it, this is coverage at 10,000 feet. You know, in US we still use feet, and that's 3 kilometers approximately. Where does the 10,000 feet come from? If many of you who fly, when you are about to land, suddenly there will be a ting, little beep, then everybody will be asked to put on their seat belt, bring their tray tables up, and then make the seat straight. That's when the aircraft crosses 10,000 feet. That's when that happens. So that's the reference height at which all these observations were done, because this all comes from aviation business, which was radars were built to shoot down airplanes. But then we did and then last time we checked, there was not many people living at 10,000 feet. Most of the people were living at height much below that. So we made a coverage diagram of where people live, and that's at 1 kilometer at 3,000 feet. You can see there is hardly much coverage for people from these big storms and everything. And then especially the place where I live in Colorado, which is the very inner mountains, there's not much coverage at all because there's a lot of blockage. Because this big radar, S-band radar covering hundreds of kilometers, that doesn't cut it. Because, so there was this, so what happens is, there are two inconvenient truths. One is, we are not living on flat earth, and then there is complex terrain, so there's inconvenience called mountains that block these observation beams. And second inconvenient truth is, earth is not flat, it's spherical. So even if there is no mountains, as you go far away, you can see that the radar beam that is in a straight line is looking way high up. So as a result, a lot of the low-level phenomena is never observed. And even if we can get it very sophisticated with models and so on, we can detect them very well, but the false alarm rate was very high. And that's what they found out in the US is they could detect tornadoes very well, but the false alarm rate was 75%, which is 3 out of 4 warnings are false alarms. The problem is, as a scientist, we could live with false alarms, but when you bring society as a loop, then that's a game-changing issue, because if you issue too many warnings with a lot of false alarms, people don't listen to you anymore. So I will talk about that in a little bit. So the solution was to make smaller radars, but more compact, and then it will give coverage only to a short distance. But in order for things to make smaller radars to happen so that it's also economical, we had to move from the traditional big S-band, which where they built this big S-band radars at the military industrial complex, to X-band, which are smaller, more compact radars. When we build these smaller, more compact radars, then all the technology had to be built from the beginning. So that's the result of this. So the idea was, instead of building this one big radar that gives hundreds of kilometers coverage, build a whole bunch of radars, but little ones, and it doesn't need large infrastructure to put on. So it is a fundamentally game-changing solution. Like everything else, when you have a game-changing solution, in addition to opposition from law of physics, there is also opposition from the establishment, because all these big radar systems have been paid for and it's been amortized. And if you want to come and change that and then put something else, people don't like it. And so that will be opposed. So, and this is not new, because when Edison wanted to implement light bulbs, people didn't like it either. So that's the way life is. So let's go to where things are. In the old days, so we built a bunch of these observing systems and radars. And then the radars are only one part of the system. Then you observe. But then the big difference is the whole system is operated as a closed loop as opposed to an open loop system. In the old days, the radars would go round and round and look at the environment and then throw the data across the fence. and to the people, and then they will just take the radar and run with it and figure out what it is. There was no change in the operation of the radars to the prevailing environment. That also was changed here. So in this case, this is a closed loop system where the radars will operate and then make observations. And then they also do what is called as nowcasting. Nowcasting is a fancy term for very short-term forecasting. And then that data is also fed into numerical models. And then you, based on what you observed, then create a task and say, how are these radars going to operate for the next 5 minutes? So that information is looped back. So there is a closed loop system. So closing the loop was one of the important aspects of this story. So as you can see, you can step through different parts of this, and then you observe the environment due to the radar network, and then real-time data mining, and then optimization for control, and then dissemination of products to end users. Now, this is just completely a physical and engineered system. The radars, and then the networks, and then the operations of everything is an engineered system. But then this is observing atmosphere, which is a physical system, which is all governed by law of physics. But this whole system where we have closed the loop, we can write mathematical equations. We can optimize everything. But this sits inside a societal system. All these things are being operated for the benefit of the society. Now, who are the users? This is the central command and control of the emergency monitoring system for the city. This is TV broadcast of all the information. This is emergency sirens. And this is kids in the school going through a civil defense drill when there's a tornado. Now those are the users, and there is an inner loop here, which is a loop of an engineered system, closing the loop with environmental system, but then this whole system is closing the loop against societal system. Societal systems are not governed by law of physics. We can see within our own family, when people want to get a favorable answer from me, they always ask me right after I've had a good dinner. They ask when I'm hungry, they don't get a good answer. So we all behave differently. We are not causal people, and you don't get the same answers all the time. So the main idea here is, how can we optimize system for the best response from people? And that was the hard part. So this research project was to come up with a demonstration and development of technology, which is fundamentally develop and demonstrate this X-band or smaller, cheaper systems will really work, because we are talking about implementing this. Now then we talk about, okay, where are we going to put these radars? And then originally I showed the picture of the US. If you have to blanket the US with all these radars, we need about 10,000 radars. And this day and age, nobody has the economics cannot stomach 10,000 radars, because already a lot of radars have been paid for and they have been amortized and so on. But then we were looking at it carefully. The benefit is really, and then we looked at who can pay for this. And then we looked at the density of cell phone towers in the US. When you look at the map of density of the cell phone towers in the US, it's very revealing. That's directly proportional to the population density. That's where people are. And cell phone towers is not a government project. It's paid by business. And so it's all paid by users, and where there is a business, the cell phones will go. Still, there are some rural regions in the US where you drive around and you have to do like this because there is no good cell phone coverage. So then we said, okay, we're going to go to the cities. But then we started studying this problem. Since 2008, more than 50% of the world population is living in cities. By 2030, this number will swell to almost 5 billion, and then the most urban growth is concentrated in Africa and Asia. And here's some data. So this blue line is global mean of the percentage of people living in urban regions, and the red curve is the same number for the U.S. If you think about it, people talk about U.S., they know the East Coast, they know the West Coast and all the cities, and they don't think there's anything in between. Then they take this big flight that flies across the U.S. And but then, see those triangles. The triangles is Asia. Asia, the jump in terms of moving the migration to cities, it's at an amazing rate, much faster than the global mean and also much faster than the US. So the bottom line is, if you give coverage to the cities, then you have covered a lot of people. And okay, so then we went through an Olympic-style choice of a city. Which city are we going to do this demonstration? So it has to be a city that is willing to pay for this. And second thing is, it has to be a city that is, the vulnerability is extremely high. And then we have to go there, and then it will be a low-hanging fruit to show that we have improved the resilience of the city. So the mission in Dallas-Fort Worth is to provide a hazard and warning at very high spatio-temporal scales. What is the meaning of spatio-temporal scales? We all talk about scales here all the time, but then they say we want information in city block scales. And then to demonstrate all the engineered products developed in CASA and urban setting, the statistics is it's got 6 million people. That's in many standards in Asia, that is a small town or a suburb of Bombay, maybe. And but Dallas-Fort Worth is the 4th largest metroplex, and it's got a population growth rate of 25% in the last decade. And then it's got another very interesting statistic. It is second highest per capita lane miles. What it means is it's got more roads per people than many other cities. And then 6th largest GNP. So this is the region in Dallas-Fort Worth. It has got 2 airports. So what we did is we built a radar network here. We assembled the pieces of the network, and then there is a whole information communication technology that goes across that connects everything. Wanted to show you, we have pulled all means to install these radars. This is another thing that's very important. This, unlike the traditional large military industrial complex radars, where installation of the radar needs its own establishment, it needs its own real estate, it just occupies a huge social footprint. These little radars can ride existing infrastructure. These can go on the top of buildings, and these 2 installations are on the top of buildings. This can be installed with cranes. You can carry them around with helicopters. And in some places where somebody wants and they have the money, they can also build their own towers to host them. And then it can be the barrier, the entry barrier is being lowered. Just like it happened in cell phones, you can slowly build and expand this network. Excuse me. So these radars are only one small part of the story, but it has to have a huge network operation. When I say network, I mean the internet. And then there has to be an internet connection running between all the radars. And there has to be a central operation facility where, where all this data is assembled. Excuse me. Yeah, thanks. And that actually, once we started building, then the National Weather Service was very interested in, thank you, participating with us because they don't want to be left out. So we have the central operations as the southern regional headquarters of the National Weather Service. And then we have to make all these products in the same format that the forecasters use. Now, there are two sets of people who use this data. One is the weather service forecasters, and then the emergency management people. The emergency management people are the people who go on the street and evacuate people, ask people to get out and everything else. And then it goes to also the sewer management people who do this flood forecasting and everything. And then there is a lot of networking information here, so on. So now what I wanted to show is how this has been a game changer. This shows some observations observed with just 2 radars. Look at the time. This is 2005, and then this is 2009. In this picture, this red blob is not here at this location, whereas you can see the red blob. You don't need to have a degree in meteorology. You don't have to have you don't need to be a radar scientist. Anybody can see this, and then see that a big storm has popped up, and it's become very intense. And this has happened in 4 minutes, and it's in an urban region. And 4 minutes is the time scale that things change quickly. And then the radius of this circle is 30 kilometers, and these are street maps. And you can see the very high, extremely high resolution that you see. And these are things that was not possible in the previous infrastructure. First, because the update time of the scan strategies of those other radars are 5 minutes. So things are changing in 4 minutes here, so which it might have missed, which was one of the big feedback information from those people. And then the second thing is those radars are very big and then huge resolution, so you don't even have this type of resolution. Okay, now I wanted to get to the very specifics here, and I wanted to show specific cases that happened. This is June 24th, and if you are living in a big metro city, and then it's got a lot of subways and roads, it doesn't take too much rain to flood the city. And also, every city has its own share of, I won't call them in public, I'm being recorded also, people who think they can outrun everything. They think their cars can float through water, and they just imagine everything, and they end up finally getting stuck in water and floods. And that has a, multiplying effect, and it creates a major chaos, and you can see what's happening here. So this flood event, so what is happening, and this is the region, and you can see that's a highway, and this data is updated every minute. And I have actually movies and all that stuff, but I didn't want to bring because you can actually step through it. But you can see the precision at which the data is being shown. And this is water accumulation, and it's 120 millimeters, and that's quite a bit of rain. And here is the same information blown up, and you can see this is the street map, and you can see different street resolutions within the city of Dallas-Fort Worth. And you can see the city block level resolution of this water inundating the city. So, in fact, that information is so powerful that nowadays, people start getting used to this and they like it. And the forecasters and emergency managers, they start tweeting now. Hey, this CASA radar suddenly shows a lot of water and a lot of rain here. Just be careful. So, that for us is, I was told, which is a little embarrassing, but it's a lot more important than the number of papers we have published, because people trust us. I have been told this by somebody. Oh, it's more important to me than the 3 papers you have got on the same topic, because people trust this system, and people are able to tweet to everybody, hey, this shows a lot of water. That's the impact of research. So, to make a long story short, I have a whole bunch of diagrams where this real-time information is taken and then fed into hydrologic models and hydraulic models that are used for flood forecasting. And then, again, in urban regions, the time constant of floods from the time it falls off as rain and then it becomes floods is too short, because most of them are flash floods. And the reason they are flash flood is there's not enough, everything is all concrete and pavements, and then there's no absorption, and then everything runs, and then it floods fast. And then the hydraulics there can also amplify the process. So one of the things we are starting to understand and study is data from the input to the hydrologic systems has never been available at this high space-time scale. So we are starting to study the scale interaction between hydrologic process and the meteorology process, because until now this meteorology has not been available at this scale. Okay, the next thing is tornado. And this is something, of course, very, I shouldn't say unique, but it's predominantly a US problem. But they are starting to pop up at other parts of the world. And you've seen big tornadoes. Those survive for a long time, and they can be tracked. Even after all this, the lead time for any tornado is only 10 or 12 minutes. And then the smaller scale tornado, which is called EF scales, EF 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is a giant mega machine that just flattens big cities. EF 0 is a tornado that will just come and destroy a few city blocks and then disappear. These are very hard to catch. And here's a case of a EF 0 tornado. This is all, I'm just reporting all the operations from the previous year, 2014. This happened on May 8. Look at the date before. This is June 24, 2014. This is May 8, 2014. And this is a F0 tornado. And this also happened. The previous flood I showed you was on this side of the city. And this I am showing on the east side of the city. This is Dallas, and this is Fort Worth. And in between is Arlington. And this is the distance at which this tornado moved on the ground, and we were able to observe and catch everything, and then send the warning. And then the way you can observe this tornado is you can actually get the dual Doppler winds. The velocity is always, it's a vector, and the radars measure only the radial velocity. So it takes 2 radars to measure the full vector velocity to build this vector arrow, and you can study the rotation and then compute the vorticity, and wherever it is red is where the tornado is. Next is hail. Now, this is the main thing I wanted to show you is hail is predominantly a product of a dual polarization aspect of these radars. And there is an elaborate information processing scheme that happens, including spatial clustering, to determine the hail. And here's an example. This is reflectivity. This is differential reflectivity, and this is differential propagation phase. These are the dual polarization measurements coming from these radars. And this is the hydrometeor identification, and then it shows different types of particles. Now, here's the example of hail. This is May 12, 2014. See, it's all 2014. In the same year, we had floods, we had hail, and we had tornadoes. I'm talking about everything. And then, see the time resolution, 2040 here and 2057. And see the spatial resolution. We show city maps. And then, all this red here is the hailstorm actually just moving. And then, and here is, this is from people who are chasing the storm. Where did that hit? Like what part of Mansfield? And this is near Joe Pool Lake. See the spatial resolution and scale that is being afforded by these new modern systems. That's amazing scale. Previously, when people used to give warnings, they used to give warning to a whole county. County is like a district. And when you give warning for a large area, people were just, they don't care. Because you just, yeah, it's supposed to rain, but they look outside, it's not raining. That's because some part of the district. In US, some districts are almost as big as some countries in the US, in Europe. Here is the rain plus hail observed on May 2014. And let me keep moving here. So that hail storms were observed, and then we gave warning. And then in addition to this, since we are observing this as a function of time, we can actually also make a nowcasting. And I think I have a few extra minutes, right? Yeah. So next is, let's move to October, all within 2014 in Dallas-Fort Worth. So I want to explain to you why we chose Dallas-Fort Worth, because there's too much action there. And so all these, that's in the belt of where warm air and cold air collides. So it creates all sorts of storms. This is a very severe wind event, and you can see the impact of this on October 2nd. And you can see what has happened to the power lines, and then a big rig has been flipped over. And this is, the trees have been blown. A roof has been completely collapsed here. And you can see that all the bricks have fallen over. And this is the high detection winds for this case. So this is, the thing is, because you have a network of radars, you are in good position to measure winds at the right pointing direction. So you can measure winds, and in this case, we measured winds at 220 kilometers per hour, and that created a huge wind damage. And then it measured winds, and then it which was not measured by the big national infrastructure radars. So, to summarize, the smart urban radar network system concept is important for enhancing resilience and societal impact in an urban environment, and because these networks are able to actually elicit response from people, and to the point that it enhances the resilience and people are able to respond to that. And then we're able to monitor also the precipitation and severe winds at urban scales. And there's Superman. And then this has a significant impact on the transportation sector, because transportation sector is vulnerability is one of the highest for transportation sector. And this information is actually put out automatically, and then it is being used. And I just wanted to, there's a lot more details we could get into in terms of how this has a direct impact, and then how this maps into enhancing the resilience. So the emergency management and enhanced resilience system for the city of Dallas-Fort Worth is under system evaluation right now. And it's really happening in a big city, and it's actually a living laboratory. And we are very, very, very fortunate, because we build a lot of the research has been done, we are implementing this, and then we are constantly tweaking it, and we get feedback all the time from emergency managers and the National Weather Service forecasters saying, hey, this part of the thing we don't like, we really like this update. And so we are in a closed loop, and we know how to close the loop with physical sciences. We know how to do this. We know how to write equations. But we are also closing the loop in terms of societal response, and that's very exciting. So this prototypes the next generation urban capability, and then dealing with practical urban issues in response, because urban regions have some really unique challenges. And urban regions have big hospitals, and they need to transport intravenous fluids, and those fluids come in big 18-wheeler trucks, not in small bottles. So like this, there are many challenges, and then their decision support systems are very complicated. With this, I will pause and take questions. Thank you.
Thank you. We have time for questions. Please use a microphone, because this presentation and the discussion is recorded. We have time for discussion because the third speaker will be not able to participate to this session. He has been called urgently to a meeting somewhere else. Okay.
I thank you, the European Geoscience Union, for facing this problem of resilience and interaction with the socio-economical system in deep. I am Giovanni Cecconi, and I'm a manager for the Venice Lagoon in Italy, and I'm in charge of developing adaptation to global change. So, as he said, Venice as well, Dallas, is a laboratory in which we can experiment the meaning of resilience. I would call it adaptation to change more than resilience, because this is an abused term. Sometimes it's a paint of green, something else, sometimes else is a no-regret policy, and it's on fashion to call it resilience, but it's not valuable, it's not useful. Second comment is about how to promote instead what is really important: transformability, compassion for the people, connectivity, how to communicate faster. That's why I have the rollerblade, to demonstrate that we need more focused and compassionate communication. And then out of this, we will develop a better world.
Thank you. Yes, she has a question. There's a question in the back.
Actually, I would agree upon what the colleague said. Actually, I would agree upon what you said, because I think for a resilient system, you need adequate response system. Therefore, I think in resilience, just with data detection and early warning, it's part of the resilient system, but it's not a complete resilience. Nevertheless, thank you very much for the presentation. It was very, very interesting. I don't want to deny that the big merit of that presentation. The other question I have: how resilient is your system, your early warning, the detection system?
Very, very, very important question. In fact, people asked, you are trying to protect this system protect people from tornadoes. What if one of the radars get hit by tornadoes, which is observing everything? So that's the reason. That's one of the fundamental reasons for what we had as the previous infrastructure is one monolithic observing system. And it has happened before, and I don't want to cite examples when it happened, where it happened. It sounds like I'm pointing fingers. On a very, very important event, the main observing system got hit. That's it. Then you go black. So by making a big network of little systems, so we have enhanced the resilience of the observation itself. That is, you can still, some of them. So we have had examples of taking direct hit by tornadoes of the observing system itself, and we were able to continue. So what happens is, take for example, one of the observing unit radar is taken out, then rest of the radars get that information, and they reconfigure themselves and then just continue going on. So in our case, as I said, I paid a lot of importance to closing the loop with people in this case. So we actually literally respond to, as a system, respond to the feedback we get from emergency managers. And also, plus, we are in the process. I don't want to discuss too much now because I'll be giving out too much. We are in the process of building a system where you get direct response from people too. There was a question in the back.
Yeah, Rick Cruz, Iowa State University, Ames, Iowa. The system that you've identified is great, and appreciate your comments. It's good for people. There's another step, though, in that many of our hydrologic models require the quality of data that you're generating with these systems. What are the potential for these systems in non-heavily populated areas and other parts of the world? They're needed badly.
I have a talk tomorrow, and I had a punchline, and I will release the punchline here. You are a hydrologist, so I can poke fun at you a little bit and then make these statements. I've been working with hydrologists a lot, providing data to these people. Hydrologists worship rain gauges, and I've known this for a long time. And so I'll give you a little story, and I won't mention city names because, so there was one city in this, Dallas-Fort Worth is a huge complex, and it's made of little cities, and it's run by what is called the North Central Texas Council of Governments. So one of the cities, which is actually one of the rich cities, had a network of gauges, and then they came and showed us, hey, your data rainfall data doesn't agree with our gauge data. So what to do? And I'm at a loss, and I just turned everything upside down, and I don't want to just adjust something. There has been a very bad practice that has been practiced for many, many years called adjusting radar-based rainfall from gauges. But for me, what that means is if a gauge is wrong, you take that mistake and then spread from one point and then spread it to the whole world. So what we did was, instead of that, we went to a nearby city, and then there we found that the rainfall information is right on the money. Actually, if you come to a talk tomorrow morning I'm giving by at 9:15, so I give quantitative information. When that was right on the money, then we later found out that these gauges were not maintained well, and on further investigation, to the point now if the radar and the gauges don't agree, they always go and check the gauges. So that I'm answering part one of your question. What is the data quality? Second thing is, how can we extend this to a non-populated place? First of all, these observing systems will work at populated or non-populated place. It's just that in a highly populated place, the economics works out, there is enough people to pay. Now, if this continues, just like these cell phones, as the first time they came around, they were very expensive, because the manufacturing cost will just drive the cost down, and then they will be very cheap so that it can be installed at many parts of the world. So that's more of an economics question than engineering question.
Last question.
Yes. Hello. I would like to know if the feedbacks that you gather through the social media have been used for research purposes by social scientists to assess the social impact of the network.
Yes, we have a whole group of social scientists studying. It was very revealing to me. They talk about space-time characteristics of response of people. And there is a whole group studying that, in fact. And so they use the traditional mechanism was to do surveys, post-event surveys, and it's changing that field also now. And we are building apps and all sorts of things, and then that's topic for a future EGU talk. But yes, the short answer is there is a big group working parallelly with this, because they're the people who are going to tell us if we are any good or not.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
So the next talk will be presented by Professor Nakatani Tsuyoshi from the National Institute of Earth and Disasters in Japan. And it's about the social experiment of TOMAX. TOMAX is a very large-scale experiment about the Tokyo Metropolitan Area Convection Study for extreme weather resilient cities. It was first a Japanese project, and it became recently an international project. Okay, you will tell more about that.
Good afternoon, and thank you for chair. Today, I'm very happy to have this opportunity to introduce one of the research in Japan called, we call this project TOMAX. My name is Tsuyoshi Nakatani from National Research Institute for Earth Science and Disaster Prevention. And first of all, I like to start from the background of TOMAX project. It's urban flash flood in Japan. It is same as the previous speakers, Professor Chandra said. And then next, I'd like to introduce an overview of TOMAX. And TOMAX has been started from 2010 and actually ended in last March. So now we are doing a lot of making a report and analyze the outcomes from project. So today it's still working on that. So today I just able to introduce a overview of TOMAX. And then finally, maybe after TOMAX, because TOMAX has been ended, but we had a new project. So I'd like to talk about the future plan for briefly. And first of all, I'd like to show what is the urban flash flood look like in Japan. And this Toga River is typical urban rivers in Japan, and catchment area is maybe less than 10 square kilometers, and the length of the river is less than 2 kilometers. And this animation is just taken every 2 minutes, and we have the very heavy rains upper part of catchment. And then, since this is an urban river, so there is some park along the rivers. And then the sudden rain hit the people. And in the later research, we realized that only 2 minutes, during 2 minutes, the water level rise 1 meter. So because of this water accident in Kobe, is west side of Japan, we have 5 people was washed away, including the small kids. And because of this sudden rise of the water level is due to the very extreme heavy rains, in also in very localized heavy rains. And after 1 week later of this Kobe accident, Toga River water accident, we also had the almost same type of the urban flash flood in Tokyo. 6 workers is working in sewage systems underneath of street, and because of the sudden rains, they are washed away, and finally 5 people was drowned. And this graph shows rainfalls by rain gauge very close to the working yard. And in the later investigation, we know that this water accident happened during 1140 to 1150s. And according to the ground rain gauges, we cannot see any foreseeing that we have very sudden urban flash or not. And this was happening in 2008. And that times our institute has expanded multi-parameter radar network with the other university and institutions very close to each other, which has expand MP radars. So we built up the net kind of radar network systems. This is for experimental purpose. But fortunately, we can observe this very heavy rains, which caused the very severe water accident. And this is image of a conventional C-band radar. That times we use these radar systems, and give us 1 kilometer mesh size, and in resolution in time is 10 minutes. And here, this is a place where we have the accident here. And that times, the conventional radar cannot detect the very heavy rain areas. And on the other hand, this is XNet catch the very heavy rain areas very successfully. And then also in the radar investigation, we know that somehow after start raining within 20 minutes, we have somehow 110 millimeters per hour intensity of rains, and that is very. This is a result of the XNet observation, so it showed a very good correspondence. And also we have the rain gauge here, and this shows the rain rate. And blue bar shows the observation by rain gauge, and red line shows this XNet. So this is the image of the conventional radar and XNet, and this is a conventional radar image, and this is XNet. And here in 2008. We have the resolution in space about 500 meters, and resolution in time is 5 minutes. And I will talk next slide. This is called X-rain. And X-rain gives you 250 meters resolution in space and 1 minute interval of data. So because of this fact that XNet can catch the very localized heavy rains quite well, so the Ministry of Land and Infrastructure and Transportation and Tourism decided to install the X-band MB network in Japan. So our institute gives technologies to transfer to the government, and then the experimental use of this X-band network was started from July 2010, and that is the same time when we start TOMAX project. And at the beginnings, we have 11 radars. 11 radars were installed, and nowadays we have 38 radar installed all over Japan, and coverage area is nowadays more than 50% population. And this radar network system is for mainly for the urban flood control. So there is some missing areas, and the area is whether it's a very mountainous area or maybe not many people are living there. So this is the future of X-rains. So we have the space resolution is 250 meters, and time resolution is 1 minute. So it gives us very detailed information of rainfalls, even the very localized heavy rains we can catch. But we use shorter wavelengths compared to the C-band or S-band, and that means energy dissipation is a little bit higher. So when we like to observe the very important areas, we install more than 2 radars together. So sometimes, because when we have very heavy rains, because of the dissipation is a little bit strong, so you cannot see the behind the high, very severe rainfalls. So we install in several radars in the same areas. And now this information is given to everyone by the homepage like this. And black square area is the area that you can fully covered by this X-rain. And if you click one areas, you can get the information like in several prefecture area size. And also, if you click the whatever you like to see, you can get the image of the very strong rain intensities in the cities scales. So now I like to talk about TOMACs. And since we have very advanced weather radars information, so that we like to utilize as soon as possible. I would like to utilize in the society as soon as possible. So TOMACs the purpose of TOMACs is to utilize these new technologies into the society. TOMACs has been studied since July 2010, as I said before, and actually ended last March. And more than 25 organizations are joined, and also the more than 100 researchers participate. And this is a framework of TOMACs. And actually in the TOMACs, there are some main three task groups. First, task one group is a study on the extreme weather with the dense meteorological observation. This group, mainly the member of this group is a meteorologist, and they like to find out the mechanism of the very severe weathers. And second task group is to develop extreme weather early detection and prediction system. And this group, the member of this group are mainly engineer and some radar specialists and also meteorologists. So they are making this system, several systems to predict and monitoring this heavy, severe weathers. And the third group, task 3, is social experimental groups. Today I like to talk about this group activities. And this member of this group consists of some social scientists and also engineers. So since it's a very the members of this TOMACs, their special field is very wide. So we need the good communication among the task groups. So we decide to have very often meetings together. So in each working groups has at least meetings once in 3 months, and also it's a group meetings. We say a liaison council. It's a gathering with the all of task members. It's also we try to hold meetings once in 3 months. So has to communicate. Otherwise, very difficult because their special field is quite different. And now the aim of social experiment group is mainly these three. One is establishment of the monitoring and predicting system of extreme weather. This was developed by the task 2 groups, and that system we like to use in the actual operation. And also the second aim is continuous advanced weather information after the project. This is quite often happen that if we have some research budget, we can continue some social experiment or maybe maintain the systems. But after the project, sometimes those working is suddenly finished. So we try to do not that way. So we try to find out a way, even after a project was end, somehow the system is utilized in the society. And then the last one is to reveal the bottleneck of social implementations. So social experiment was carried out in the 4 different disaster fields. Like first group is rescue service, and second field is risk management, and the third one is infrastructures, and the last one is education and life. And each field we have partners, right? Like in rescue service, our partner is Tokyo Fire Department. In risk management fields, we have several local authorities. And infrastructure fields, we have private company of railway and construction companies. And education and life fields, we have several university and some environmental institution in Tokyo, and also weather company and weather forecaster groups. From here, I just introduce some our activities in each the fields. First of all, this is activities of the rescue service with Tokyo Fire Department. And we especially designed a web page for Tokyo Fire Department. And this is just an image of that web page. And we superimposed the image of the X-rays, rainfall intensities image on the base map which they used. And there is on the base map there is some locations of the local office of fire department, and also they show the rivers and some railway networks. And not just overlay the real-time intensity of rains. In some point, they can check the total rainfall, the amount of total rainfall, and also the information before, like in the animation style or split screen types. And also, if the local office sets some criteria of intensity of rainfalls, the web page gives you alert that criteria is exceed or something like this. And how to make this the web page is something like this. First, we suggest a web page and ask to use in 1 year for not only for the head office of Tokyo Fire Department, and also we have about 100 local office. So every local office also asked to use. And then the end of years, the Tokyo our partner Tokyo Fire Department make some questionnaires to every local office and members of the firemen, and what is the evaluation and what is the point you like to know, or you like to have the function, or some more additional function. And we have meetings with the Tokyo Fire Department and argue about maybe next year, so what kind of the function installs. So we install the new functions on the web pages according to the discussions, and then start again for next year's. We ask the operation, and this times we make this cycle 3 times. That means 3 years passed, and then that special web page was set up. And the evaluation of that the web page is quite good according to the firemen, because many cases that we try to introduce the function and also the designs according to their opinions. So this is another tools for better warning system. This is activities of risk management with local governments. In most of the times, the local government has their own alarm systems based on the rain gauge on ground. So we like to use the rainfall information, radar rainfall information instead of the ground rain informations. So we built some kind of the virtual warning system like this. So we have now three type of the virtual warning systems. Like indoor type is a compact one, and outdoor types, waterproof types, something like this. And this multi-purpose alarm system works something like this. We have the radar information and data saved in our institute data servers. And if we have small computers like a laptop or not PCs, you can get the X-ray data on real times. And here we make several trial operation rules in the computers. And then whenever if they reach to the some levels, we can set the 4 levels of alarm for alarm. And alarm remote unit send the signals to the alarm unit. Alarm unit is here by the mobile phone lines. So this part not necessary to install very close to those terminals. So actually, this one is now working in our institute, and this part is installed in some local government. And once the alarm unit receives the signals, and also they transfer the signals to the several unit terminals by wireless lines. So this is some limitation of distance. If you have the more than 500 meters, they cannot work, but within 100 meters, they can work. So this is an example how to use it. First, we ask like a city office or local government to install our terminals, and then we invite one of the officers to our institution as a visiting researchers at least twice in a month, and we discuss and we give some technical information like how to this moment how to use the X-ray data, radar data to create what type of the warning. And then the officers come to our institute, give us evaluation and also some information, administrative information to us. Because of this, officer can see this virtual warning system is working, and also they have their own system, so they can compare. So we are asked which one is better or which one is not good, and what is necessary, what is have a timing or several things. So this way, try to educate the officers in the local government, and also at the same times, try to find out what is the best way to use new advanced radar information system instead of the ground rain gauges. And this is the activities in the ordinary life. We have the big digital signage in the towns. We call big vision, right? Like it's a big TVs installed in the buildings. So we purchased some programs, time of programs, because this big vision was used mostly for commercial base. And so, but we can purchase sometimes like twice in 1 hour, and each time is 30 seconds. So during that times we can transfer the X-ray images in the visions. Of course, we cannot control only when we have very heavy rain, so we can broadcast by these big visions because of the time schedules is fixed. But whenever we have rains, our people go there and ask the people in the towns, so what do you think, or what is your impression, and what kind of the design you can easily understand or not. So we try to figure out is there any way to utilize the big visions in the towns as the information transport media or not. Also, this is activities in the education. We the research works with high school students together. We provide not only the advanced radar information, and also there is several another weather observation data. So some of high school we call SSH, Super Science High Schools. They have some system that every first grade student has to do their some own research during 1 year. So we just present our TOMAX project and ask who likes to join our project, and maybe we work together or something like this. And the last year, 2014, we have 4 students join our project. And this student find out that whenever we have very severe rains, somehow they get a strong wind with temperature rolls. So they thought this kind of information can use for the prediction of strong rain before. So this result was presented in JPGU Japan, the JPGU last year in the how do you call it, the student sessions. And this activity still continue this year, and we have now 8 students join our research works, and some of them will go to present in JPGU and any other associations. Well, one of the social experimental purpose is to find out the needs of the people. So this is one of trial that with the local government, they have their own homepage to communicate with residents. So we superimpose the radar rain intensities, and also we added some function that they can. There is some function that they can answer to our questions, like what is your age, gender, and how, or what is your impression? Is it a useful information, or you like to use for future or something like this. And this the very high resolution information is very good evaluation, like more than 80% of the residents say that it's very useful, and also close to the 90% of residents say that they like to use continuously. And also we are asking the purpose of use of this image, and also some occupation and where they accept. And the purpose is also very varied in the several different purposes. Like some residents use this information when likes to go to shopping, and also some of them use this information like Saturday, Sundays events, sport events, or some cultural events, something like this. But we are more interested in what timing they are looking for this information. So there is some function we added some function that whenever the residents see the homepage, there is some record of access. So this is one of the examples, 1 month examples, and this is August 2013, and every 1 hour we know how many people are accept. And if you see the yellow part, it's quite heavy access. So in Reuters, we try to find out why the time that many people access on this homepage. So we find out. We try to find out, and also we try to ask them why you are access this moment. And somehow we realized that this X-rays only gives real-time information, not forecasting. But through this access logs, we understand the people is naturally forecasting by themselves. So they like to have the prediction of rainfalls is very much. And still we are working to summarize of outcomes of this project. So this is not the final conclusion, but here I just show some issues arise from the social experiment. First one is involvement of government, because this is for disaster prevention information. Therefore, if whenever we said maybe during the project you can get the information, but after the project this information is not sure whether we can provide you or not. So this is a big issues for the users, because they have to have them. If this information is good, they like to continue to use it. So the sustainability is very important, and this is somehow we need the involvement of government, and also the cost. And nowadays, from the 2014, you can buy, even the individuals can purchase this rainfall information, but still you have to pay. Maybe data itself is not very expensive. For 1 month, for one area, it's about 80 euros or something like this. But still, this gives some the most motivation down. And from the user point of view, we have some difficulties too, because their needs is quite wide, and also even the same information they like to have in different contents. Like some officers say that the text type of information is good enough, but some say that it must be some picture or some animation, something like this. So the needs is there is very much a variety of the needs. And more importantly is in the social experiment, we often ask the people, what is your need? Of course, they answer to us, but that is obvious needs only. There is some potential needs, and even the user cannot realize sometimes, and this is a very important point. And finally, this group is the local officers groups. This is TOMAX is a 4.5 years project. But during these times, sometimes the officer change maybe 3 times. And it's very much give us a hard time because whenever the people is changed, we have to explain. And some cities, even the mayor is changed. And also the budget problems is because of the local government is quite sectionalized. They cannot use the budget cross-sectionalized. Okay, it's time. So I just show this some future plan. TOMAX has been finished, but we started already the new project called SIP, Cross Ministerial Strategic Innovation Promotion Programs. This is a very wide and big project, but our institute joined a group of heavy rain and tornado prediction technology development groups. And here we are still able to continue the social experiment. And also the TOMAX in Japan was finished, but we have the international version of TOMAX RDP. And this TOMAX RDP is continued for the next years. And we have planned to have the 3rd international workshop in this year too, maybe November or December, sometimes in Japan. So if you are interested, maybe contact me sometimes, and we cannot provide any fund to come to Japan, but maybe I can give you some information. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay. So please, I'm sure you have questions about this experiment.
Yes.
And the future of it. If no question, I'm wondering, you have shown some data about social experiment. Are they available? For example, the distribution of the hits to the website, or you showed also, you have shown also, some result of a survey. Are these data available for researchers outside of Japan, or?
At this moment, I cannot answer exactly because we are still working on summarize the output of research works. But we try to open. We like to try to open the results. And
so mostly TOMAX is concentrated on Tokyo, but as far as I understand now in Japan there are 10 cities which have more or less similar experiments. And is there a kind of networking between the 10 cities, or are they just separate experiments?
Oh yes, I didn't mention these times, but the one of the aim of the social experiment is any kind of the systems developed in this research has to be used in everywhere. So the experiment is mainly did it in the Tokyo areas, but the result is we like to spread over all Japan after even the TOMAX is end.
If there is no other question, we will just go to the coffee break. It's time to do it. And we are restarting at 3:30. And I hope you will have time to get some coffee somewhere. Free coffee from EGU, which is difficult to find. I think you have to go to the poster area to get it. Yeah, that's the way to do it, I think. Okay, so see you back in half an hour. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hubert, I don't remember your last name. Sarangi, I will say. You will tell me it's not the correct way to say it.
That's fine.
And it's about how ecosystem adapt to climate variability.
Okay. Thank you very much, Danielle. I'm glad to be here. I think resilience is an extremely important topic, not only for the well-being of our humanity on this planet, but also from a scientific point of view, because what we see is that many systems in the Earth system that we see, that we observe, apparently have been able to becoming what they are. And this is when you have developed some resilience to actually manifest yourself. So resilience is, I think, essential to the processes that we observe. And this definitely applies to ecosystems. So what I will first do is try to relate what ecosystems do to what we as people do. Because in principle, we as human beings also act like ecosystems. We adapt to our environment. So, what do people do if they cannot secure their water? If you go back into what we now call the Anthropocene, the first moment that we start to make an impression on the Earth, we tapped our water just by digging a hole in the ground or by harvesting rainfall directly. At least that's what I assume. And the first proof of that is hand-dug wells that go back something like 10,000 years or even more. But what is maybe more impressive is the first real reservoirs that occurred, because by a reservoir, you really try to flatten out natural fluctuations that you find in rivers and streams. So about 5,000 years ago, we see the first dams coming. And the Marib Dam in Yemen is one of the examples. And it is, of course, not strange that in the Middle East, in a semi-arid area, where also the very productive agricultural areas where that we find the first proof of reservoirs, which are human ways of creating a buffer, of creating a resilience against climatic variability. Now, I'm an engineer by training. And before the computer age, we learned how to size reservoirs. And we had a graphical method for that. And that graphical method was called the ripple diagram. It is, well, more than 100 years old, 150 years old. And what you then do, what you did for a ripple diagram, is you accumulated the inflow to the reservoir, which is this accumulated inflow, and then you sort of had a tangent, which was your demand. This was the amount of water you wanted to have out of the reservoir. And then in a wet period, the inflow is more than the demand, so you don't worry. But as soon as this curve starts flattening, the demand is more than the inflow. And when it starts going up again, when it is more than the tangent, you have no worries. And if you have a reservoir large enough to store the difference between the two tangents, then it's big enough. And if you have a longer series of years or dry periods, you can calculate all these differences, you can put them in a Gumbel graph, and if you have a certain number of years, you can then design a reservoir once in 10 or once in 20 years, probability of exceedance. This is how engineers do it. Now, but what do ecosystems do? The most surprising finding of this talk is that ecosystems do the same. They can't hold a pen in their hands and plot a diagram, but in fact, they do the same. Now let's see. Let's see how I can prove that hypothesis. That people are not unique, but that also ecosystems create their own buffers, their own storage, which is in fact creating resilience against climatic variability. Now, let me first, because I'm a hydrologist, so I think in hydrological concepts, let me first tell you how hydrologists conceptualize the storage of ecosystems. And if you have a simple bucket model, then this here, this bucket, is the storage that an ecosystem has available to guarantee its transpiration. There are more parts in the bucket. This, or in a model, this bucket here is the bucket that the canopy of the ecosystem has to intercept precipitation, which it then evaporates again. And this is the recharge to the groundwater, and this is the runoff to the river system. But essentially, an ecosystem creates its buffer here. And we can determine that by hydrological modeling, by calibrating a model to a rainfall runoff system. And this is the root zone storage capacity. This is what is the ecosystem, or at least the storage of the ecosystem in hydrological models. Now, how do we, in the entire globe, determine this root zone storage capacity? And with we, I mean also climate modelers. Climate modelers, when they need to know how much evaporation there is from the surface, they use a land-atmosphere interaction model, which in fact is this soil moisture stock. They use it. All the climate models use it. All the weather models use it. All the hydrologists use it. Everybody uses this. But how do they determine it? Logically thinking, you have a soil. A soil has certain properties to retain moisture. You make, if you want to know how they do it, they take a sample of the soil, put it into the lab and exercise suction pressures on it, and then you can make a so-called PF curve, and then you can identify 2 points in between which an ecosystem can withdraw water, often called the wilting point, which is the lowest point, and the field capacity, which is the highest value. In between, you then know how much storage there is available. The only extra thing that you need to know is how deep is the root zone. So if you know how deep the root zone is, and you know the soil properties, you can determine this root zone storage capacity. Daniel, is this the way you do it too? No. Oh. But does it sound logical?
Acceptable.
It sounds completely logical. The only thing that you need to know, you need to have detailed soil knowledge. You need soil maps of the entire globe if you want to do it in other parts of the world. And you need to know how deep the ecosystem is rooting. So that means that ecologists and biologists go over the world digging holes and say, okay, now I don't see any roots anymore, so this is the root zone depth. This is how they do it. And they have got maps from all over the world where they give you this value. Now, I leave it to you to imagine how accurate that is. Because I live in Holland, but I don't see a hole every 100 meters where some ecologist has made. I don't see that. So I cannot imagine that the whole world has been sampled very accurately. But these maps exist. And this is the standard method. And to put it in the framework that we are talking about, do you think that that is the best way of getting this information? Or should we try to think like an ecosystem and think, if I was an ecosystem, how much storage would I create? Because the fact that the ecosystem is there means that it has enough capacity to overcome the climate variability. So we can just look at the climate and look at the properties of the ecosystem and derive it from there. And that's what my students and I have been doing. So, the old method assumes that the ecosystem is passive. But now let's see if we can apply our trick, our engineering trick, to an ecosystem. The inflow to the root zone is what we call the effective precipitation, which is the precipitation minus the interception. That's what flows in. What is the demand? Is the demand in the dry season. We can, by the water balance, easily determine the average annual transpiration. That's something that we can do. But how much is it during the dry season? Now, what we use is the NDVI, which is an indicator for the photosynthetic activity in a plant, and that scales with the transpiration. So we scale the dry season transpiration in proportion to the NDVIs. And then we can obtain the tangent during the dry season, which we then use to determine the required storage capacity. We can repeat that for the number of years, and then we can put that in a Gumbel theory, or a Gumbel equation to analyze the frequency. Now, my student Hongkai Gao, sitting here, he tested this theory first in Thailand. Why in Thailand? Well, we had a friend in Thailand who had data, so that's why we ended up in Thailand. And yeah, I mean, we wanted to test it. Now, the first thing we did was we have a catchment here, which is called the Upper Ping, very important in a catchment in Thailand. And they have many, many sub-catchments here, some 20-odd catchments, of which they have very accurate rainfall runoff over quite a period of time. And also, you can see from the NDVIs that the evaporation is not homogeneous. There are natural forests, palm tree forests, there are wadis, or there are sawas, paddy fields, there is grassland, there is agricultural fields. It's quite a combination of ecosystems. We took 6 of these catchments that had no reservoirs in there and that were more or less natural, and we did the same trick. That led to a couple of these tangents, and then we plotted these storages on Gumbel graphs. Now, if you look a bit closely, these are 6 catchments. You can see the number of years with data, and you can also see the extrapolations, the red dots for different return periods. So we put here particularly the ones in 10 years and ones in 20 years. And we also put like a star the storage that we obtained from hydrological modeling, from calibration. And you can see here that the star is almost always between once and 20 years. We also did it in this way. Calibration of a model always has uncertainty, as all hydrologists know since Keys-Bevan. And the modeling then gives you an average and a sort of a box and whiskers plot of possible combinations. And so this is for catchment 4A, 14, etc. And then we plot on the side the return periods of storage requirements. And you can see that the calibrated values very nicely fit the box between once in 10 and once in 20 years. Now, this is amazing because I'm quite sure that these ecosystems don't know of Gumbel's theory. Probably, if you ask a tree, they don't know what a 10 years return period is. But if you could ask a tree, how can you survive this tough climate? Then the tree would probably answer, well, if I can reproduce myself and I can create offspring, if I can live long enough to create offspring, then my ecosystem survives. Well, how much time do I need to create offspring? Well, between 10 and 20 years, just like our kids, you know. It's about the same. So this result, you know, if it had been once in 1,000 years, I would have been extremely surprised, because then the ecosystem would have invested in roots and roots and not have enough carbon to flourish. And if it had invested once in 2 years, for a once in 2 years drought, then I'm not so sure if it would have survived. So the once in 10, once in 20 years is quite a logical thing to do. Of course, we shouldn't think that ecosystems think something is logical, but this is what the evolution would most probably result in. So nice, we were happy when we got this result. But then, you know, you have to submit this to a journal to get it accepted, and a reviewer would say, well, why did you take only these 6 from the 20-odd catchments, and have you not tested this wider? Is this a strike of luck, correct? So we went to the US, to the MOPEX database. And the MOPEX database has a huge range of climatic zones, as you all know. From the east to the west, it's completely different. North to south, also different climatic zones, different landscapes. And we did it for the entire MOPEX data set. And the graphs you see here, this is if we plot our predicted once in 20 years storage requirement against the calibrated, as Umax is the calibrated, for once in 20 years, we get a very nice fit. If we go to once in 10 years, it is too low. If you go to once in 40 years, it's too high. So what applies to Thailand apparently also applies to the US. And the different colors, that's the fascinating thing. The different colors are different ecosystem classifications as done by ecologists. So they say, and maybe I can see it if I go back, I'm not 100% sure. Oh, no, I think I have to see it here. These are ecoregions as classified by Wyken, and there are different classes. And these classes mean things like deciduous forest, grasslands, prairie grasslands, or these kind of things. And you can very nicely see that these classes, and on the right, the red one is Thailand, the other classes are from the MOPEX dataset, that you see a similar pattern. The calibrated values correspond with what you would predict out of a sort of a resilience philosophy for ecosystems. This paper was recently published in Geophysical Research Letters. Now, another student of mine who will present tomorrow in the BG session, she did it for the whole globe. So we took data on precipitation and evaporation from era interim, but we also used more advanced precipitation products of GPCC. I must tell you honestly, I don't know the details of that, but my student does, and evaporation products of SSEB. And we redid it for the entire globe. And now you see fascinating things. Look at the Amazon. This is essentially the same ecosystem classification. This is also the same ecosystem classification that all the global models use. But look at the variability. If you are on the equator itself, it rains almost every day, the year round. So an ecosystem doesn't have to have deep roots. It may have roots for its stability, but these roots will probably be widespread, as you see in tropical forests. They have a pancake foundation. But the same tropical forest, maybe different species combination, a bit to the north, if you go to Suriname or to Guyana, it has much higher root depth. Why? It's a permanent green forest, but it has a clear dry period because you have the Tropic of Cancer. So you see that when you go north and south, you need, because of the seasonality, much deeper rooting if you are a permanent tree. You also see this in Africa. In the middle of the Congo or in the Central African Republic, you have very low rooting depth, but when you go down into Zaire and into Zambia, you see deeper rooting, or larger volume, I should say. And the same is, of course, in the Sahel. The trees of the Sahel must have a strong buffer because they have a clear dry season, and in that part they are not deciduous. And Europe, yeah, poor Europe, hydrologically uninteresting Europe, has something like 100 to 200 millimeter storage because, yeah, in the winter there is no evaporation, so the trees don't need to buffer for the winter. It's only the summer, and in the summer we have rainfall. You only have some dry spells. So it's rather straightforward. I'm closing off now, quickly. So, the root zone storage, which is a bucket in our model, is alive. It's not a dead thing. And the entire model is alive, because also the interception is alive. And the preferential flow is created by the ecosystem to create drainage, subsurface drainage. The whole model is alive. This is what people don't realize. They think it's mechanistic, but it's not. It's an ecosystem creating a resilience against the variability of climate. So, the root zone storage is essentially the result of an ecosystem adapting to the climate, and ecosystems create resilience by adjusting the root zone storage capacity. And these are the references that I've used. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much for this stimulating presentation. I believe there will be questions. Oh.
Thank you. So my question would be about resilience itself. Would you say it's like related to the process, like buffering, or would you say related to the results, like resilience to a drought, or?
Yeah, it is in fact creating a buffer, and of course this is dynamic. You can imagine even, at least that's what I imagine, that if you have a drought occurring, the ecosystem will most probably use that period to extend its roots a bit further than it would otherwise do. And if you have a couple of wet years, a sequence of wet years, then maybe even they would abandon some of their roots. So it is dynamic, but it will definitely aim at some value that allows them to grow a bit deeper when necessary. That's what at least I would imagine. I saw Tammo Steenhuis' hand there.
Just wait for the microphone.
I like this a lot. I mean, this is what we need in a living model. But it is always easy to find the exceptions, right? And that is not an invalidity of the theory, but how about restrictive layers in agricultural soil? How would you account for those?
Yeah. Well, you put your finger on a sore spot here, because agriculture is something else. Because a farmer first destroys everything that was there, creates sort of laboratory conditions so that the soil is again the soil, and then plants a seed, and that still has to develop its roots. So this method does not apply to agriculture. And if you realize that a large part of the US and Europe is in fact under agriculture, then this requires a separate treatment of agricultural land. And I think the classical method applies to agricultural land. In fact, it was derived for agricultural land. I think the mistake that we make is that we use the method that we developed for agricultural land to natural ecosystems. Alec, maybe?
Yeah, yeah. Just wait.
The question is the following: how your methods, or probably it's a wrong thing because I'm not hydrologist, could they apply for the one of the largest storage of the Earth to the polar regions?
Can this
for
method
example,
also be applied to polar regions?
Yes, exactly.
Well,
If it's related to the storage of water, as you said.
Yeah, we are trying to do it. What you see in the polar regions, you have also in the polar regions forest, but you also have tundra. Yes, you can. Of course, you then have in your model to take into account that the soil freezes and thaws. That's possible. But in the evaporation signal, you can see what the evaporative demand is. But my first impression would be the polar regions require only very small storage. That's what I would suspect. But we have to find out. And I would definitely like to go out and get actual data to test this. Yeah. But as your question points out, this is not a panacea yet. We really have to look. For instance, a cactus doesn't develop a root storage. It buffers in its body. So it doesn't apply to a cactus. And eucalyptus roots until it gets into the groundwater. So also for the Australian species, we need to look at it in a different way. But what I try to do here is to just change our minds a bit and think in a different way towards hydrological modeling.
I presumably misunderstood your color image of the map of the world, but it seems that it varies from 0 and 0.5 meters. And I'm just wondering what is the precision of your estimates you claim in this case?
This is a root zone storage, so it's not the rooting depth, it's a root zone storage. So say you have 10% accessible storage in your soil, then 0.5 would mean 5 meters deep rooting. Is that your question, or is that?
To me, it seems still not enough. Well, error bars were much larger on your estimates on the 6 catchment and here.
Can you
variability, according to me, the variability which is present here in colors is not so much representative with respect of huge error bars which you were presenting before. It means that could be a big overlap between the different colors.
I still don't get your point. I think a range for half a meter storage. Say that you have a rainfall, an annual rainfall in the order of 500 millimeters per year, then a half a meter of storage means that you store everything. So it's not small. Is that what you meant, or not? Yeah. So in these figures also, it seldom occurs that you have more than 500 millimeters storage. It can occur. And the color dark red is there for more than 500. Yeah?
There is another question. Okay.
So the ecosystems are adapted to the climate that are around them. How long does it take for an ecosystem to adapt in a changing climate if the climate variability itself is changing over time? And if we indeed have a changing climate, what is the basis for doing this?
These are the most interesting questions that I also would like to look into. My feeling is that ecosystems are, to a certain extent, able to adjust to the climate change. Because if a plant can, in let's say, in 5 years, 5 to 6 years, reach more or less its mature storage, maybe 10 years, then per year it can at least do 1/10 of it. So, then that means that, so if the climate changes by 10%, maybe in a few years it already has created enough storage. It's only that often changes go with shocks. So because of climatic change, you may have exceptionally dry periods. And certain parts of ecosystems will just die out as a result. But my feeling is that the resilience is much larger than what we think, or that we nowadays are afraid of, which doesn't mean that we should just continue to burn CO2 or produce CO2. I mean, I'm all against that, but I think we are overdoing a little bit, or let's say underestimating the capacity of ecosystems to adjust. I think they are quite capable of doing that.
May I ask you a short question?
Yes, well, you may also cut me off.
Yeah, maybe. Why did you choose a Gumbel law for the extreme?
I could have used any. Okay. It's just a matter of ranking. I thought Gumbel is what everybody knows, but we are not extending into once in 10,000 years, so it doesn't make any difference.
I thought a little bit that, yeah. So it's not so extreme.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so Vladimir Kosabokov will present the second paper about predicting predictable about natural catastrophic extremes. So maybe we will leave from Gumbel law.
No, I think I avoid using much of mathematics. Also, as a mathematician, I would start with citation of I think the authoritative in mathematics. So Israel Maasej Gelfand was saying that it is terrible that in our technocratic age we do not doubt the initial basic principles, but when these principles become the basis for constructing either a trivial or finely developed model, then the model is viewed as complete substitute of natural phenomenon itself. So I think that the previous presentation was showing the complexity, which doesn't fit any model, even it has a long history. And the better the model, the worse it becomes for its applications. Indeed, the pressure of snatched initial principles will lead us to use the model well beyond the possibilities of its application. And in fact, I'll be talking about what is at stake when we misuse statistics and what is at stake when we use unpredictable predictions. Usually, forecast prediction of extreme events is not an easy task, and by definition, extreme events are a rare one in a series of kindred phenomena, and generally it implies investigating a small sample of case histories with the help of delicate statistical methods and data of different quality collected in various conditions. Many extremes are clustered, far from independent, for example, Poissonian or Gumbel, and full of fractal or some other strange distribution, far from uniform or, say, normal distribution. Evidently, such an unusual situation complicates search and definition of precursory behaviors to be used for forecast prediction purposes. So making forecast prediction claims quantitatively probabilistic in the frames of the most popular objectivist viewpoint on probability requires very long series of yes-no forecast prediction outcomes, which cannot be obtained without an extended rigorous test of the candidate method in real time. The set of errors and other information obtained in such a test supplies us with data necessary to judge the candidate's potential as a forecast prediction tool and eventually to find its improvements. This is to be done first in comparison against random guessing, which results confidence in predictions. So we should note also that an application of forecast prediction tools could be very different in cases of different costs and benefits, and therefore requires determination of different optimal strategies. And in its turn, case-specific costs and benefits may suggest a modification of forecast prediction tools for a more adequate optimal application. So here is the error diagram, which is now sort of substituting ROC. And unfortunately, even on the first presentation at the EGU in the morning on Monday, so Katsumi Hattori was using it, but he was using only a part and a little bit modified part. He was speaking about, say, optimist, which is this point, and pessimist, this point, and saying that the diagonal is connecting those two is the random guessing. He was plotting his results of predictions using ultra-low frequency of magnetic field for short-term earthquake predictions, but he did not account for the second part of Molchan's theory of strategy. This is cost-benefit functions. And you can see on this map two cost-benefit functions. So the one which tends to be very optimistic is so-called probability gain. Due to concave shape of the diagram, the probability gain would be obtained when you are almost optimist. So when you hit, so the strategy to be a champion is just to make one successful prediction and then don't predict at all. Then your probability gain score will increase and eventually reach unreachable by other predictors' value. The others, so there could be other, say, cost benefits like the maximum of losses versus maximum of time spent in prediction. So, of course, as a mathematician, I had a few applications, so I could have spoken about, say, Earth's surface temperatures and the predictions that are coming from this series of what people consider as a global temperature, showing that very simple polynomial tests suggest that the uncertainty is very high. So we cannot predict, say, changes of the global temperature for more than, say, 5–10 years. And I could have spoken about these predictions coming for solar cycle. You can see how the average peak changed during the rather short period when the cycle 23 end up. And I could speak about this predictions coming from correlation of solar activity and global temperatures. And but I would talk about earthquakes, and in fact, I would show why earthquake occurrences bring us so many surprises. And the answer seems evident if we review the relationships that are commonly used to assess seismic hazards. So one of that is coming from assumption that earthquakes follow Poissonian process. So, moreover, we know that seismic evidences accumulated to date demonstrate clearly that most of the empirical relations commonly accepted in the early history of instrumental seismology can be proved erroneous when testing statistical significance is applied. For example, we know for sure that seismic events, including mega earthquake cluster, displaying behaviors that are far from independent or periodic. So you can see that with the first earthquake, with the first mega earthquake on December 26, 2004, we could, and I did, predict that in the next decade we'll experience a few more mega earthquakes like it happened in Nias in Chile and then in Tahoco. So the specific distribution in space and time of earthquakes is possibly fractal, maybe even multifractal, definitely far from uniform, even in a single segment of fault zone. Earthquakes evidently cascade into aftershocks that readjust a hierarchical system of blocks and faults in the locality of the main shock rupture. The majority of great earthquakes show switching to higher activity level of recurrence. Their aftershock number differ by factor 100 or more, and their relaxation time varies up to 50 times. So here you can see the intervent times. Actually, the lines show the moving averages for the 3 earthquakes that happened more or less in the same area, more or less at the same time. So those are the events shown up there. So such a situation contradicts generally accepted assumptions for analytically tractable or computer simulations, and surely complicates design of reliable methodologies for realistic hazard assessment, as well as search and definition of precursory behaviors to be used for forecast prediction purposes. Regrettably, many branches of natural sciences today appear to belong to this preconceptual science, which is illustrated in these 2 cartoons. So as a result, the conclusions drawn from such simulations and analysis can mislead to scientifically groundless application, which is unwise and extremely dangerous in assessing expected societal risks and losses. So concluding the series, Dana answers with, "That's where you come in," when asked by Lucy how she is going to float across the ravine and dismiss the unproven theory of gravity. So that's the problem. So science should be able to warn people of looming disaster. And behind Vladimir Sakovich on the wall of his room in UCLA, there was this map, global seismic hazard map, and this was a result of the program supported by International Council of Scientific Unions, and was in fact endorsed as a demonstration program in the framework of United Nations International Decade for Natural Disaster. So the project terminated in 1999, and we found that this map was not tested. Although one is well advised when traveling into a new territory to take a good map and then to check the map with the actual territory during the journey. So our check discloses gross inaccuracy of this probabilistic product, which appears unacceptable for any kind of responsible seismic risk evaluation and knowledgeable disaster prevention. So for example, each of the 59 magnitude 7.5 or larger earthquakes in the period in 10 years after publication of this map were surprises, and the average and the median for those events are about 2. Intensity 2 difference brings you from light damage here to moderate heavy or to violent, and violent shaking and heavy damage. So, and if we look at the color-coded discrepancy, we see that surprises dominate, while big surprises are widespread throughout the seismic regions worldwide. You are well aware of this figure shown for Japan after the Tohoku earthquake, but this is, I would say, a universal situation for the globe. So, in fact, the contributors to G-SHARP could have evaluated the poor performance of their product before its publication. So you can see that the percentage, which is of errors that was obtained after publication, in 10 years after publication, could have been almost the same as could have been estimated from the 10 years before publication. Enough to say that the Kobe earthquake is a surprise for this map, and the Kobe earthquake was 4 or 5 years before the end of the project. So here is a sad sum of consequences which to some extent are related to this to very poor assessment of seismic hazard worldwide. You can see that again for the deadliest earthquakes, this discrepancy in what is on the map and what did happen in reality is again on average 2 units of intensity. And this inaccuracy, these errors in expected hazard propagate nonlinearly in the measures like fatalities, population affected, and the settlements affected. So you can see here the numbers, how big they are with magnitude rising. So the self-evident shortcomings and failures of G-SHARP appeals to all earthquake scientists and engineers for an urgent revision of the global seismic hazard maps from the first principles, including background methodologies involved, such that there becomes a demonstrated and sufficient justification of hazard assessment protocols, a more complete learning of the actual range of earthquake hazards to local communities and populations, and a more ethically responsible control over how seismic hazard and seismic risk is implemented to protect public safety. It follows that international project, global earthquake model, is on the wrong track if it continues to base seismic risk estimates on a standard method to assess seismic hazard. So, and in fact, they continue to do what they've done in the past. And here you can see the new reappraisal of G-SHARP for the European territory with 2 examples. So in case of Romania, and you can see this part here, and of course this is repeated here. And we put on top of it the intensity after an earthquake in 1977, plus a few, this black black stars are earthquakes in the 17th century, which are known to produce ground shaking in this particular area up to intensity 9. So, and the other region, another figure here, show that for the territory of Italy, the new map, this share map, is going far away from reality. So on the left side here, you can see the distribution of intensity in the database, in the Italian database, which is very long, contains data for 1,000 years. And you can see on the right what is suggested just a year ago. So the situation is not hopeless and could be improved dramatically, and I didn't show you this part, which is part of a neo-deterministic analysis that is used to produce intensity maps like needed, what are needed in for a knowledgeable assessment of hazards and risks. So, the situation could be improved due to available geological, geomorphologic, seismic, and tectonic evidences and data combined with deterministic pattern recognition methodologies, especially when intending to predict predictable, but not the exact size, site, date, and probability of target event. So here is the 2 volumes of PAGEOF, which shows provides some criticism and provides some positive scenarios for development and better advanced seismic hazard assessment. So understanding the complexity of nonlinear dynamics and hierarchically organized systems of blocks and faults has led already to methodologies of neo-deterministic seismic hazard analysis and intermediate term, middle and narrow range earthquake prediction algorithm tested in real-time application over the last decades. So here is the book which Max Lewis collected with many chapters. So one of the chapter refers to earthquake prediction. Another chapter is answering why are the standard probabilistic methods of estimating seismic hazard risk too often wrong. And of course, a simple answer exists to this question, so that most, if not all, the standard probabilistic methods to assess seismic hazard, namely PSHA, and associated risks, are based on subjective, commonly unrealistic, and even erroneous assumptions about seismic recurrence. So let me spend another couple of minutes just to finish with that. And so, for example, I was always telling people what is probability of you are talking about, and and depending on a probability model, you can get different results. For example, this is an exercise performed by Buval and co-authors in 2008 when they assumed Poissonian distribution and found out that to get, say, 10% of confidence in recurrence rates, you need thousands, tens of thousands of years. So you really need to speak about probabilities. You must use geological information. So this unified scaling law for earthquakes, which name I borrowed from Perbach's publication of 2002, helps a little bit so that we can provide some neo-deterministic assessment based on UCLE and combine it with population coming to some risk, which of course should be improved with data from specialists on that. So I think that I should probably just skip all the other things which are related to earthquake prediction. So those who predict earthquakes were always following this rule that nature shoots an arrow and then you draw the target, but now people are getting more advanced, so they use this Texas Spatial-Schuppen fallacy. So, and of course, I should probably know that none of the proposed earthquake precursory signals evaluated by International Association of Seismology were found to be, and none of the gridded rate-based forecast models passed the rigid testing by collaboratory. However, we passed this rigid test over the years, and here you can see the target, and in fact the circles that we put on the global scale are inside this yellow circle, well within the bull's eye, and we are coming to these statistics that say that permit us to make this conclusion. So seismic premonitory patterns exist. Formation of earthquake precursors at scale of years involves large size for fault system. The phenomena are similar in a wide range of tectonic environment and in other complex nonlinear systems. So, and these predictions could be used if we know their reliability and there is methodology to perform such kind of risk analysis and reduction of disaster risk. So this is the last paper which we co-author with Vladimir Isakovich Kelis-Borak, and this was speaking about missed opportunity for disaster preparedness in case of Tohoku earthquake. So I think I should probably finish right here, that the contemporary science can do a better job in disclosing natural hazards, assessing risk, and delivering such info in advance extreme catastrophes, which are low probability events that happen with certainty, that is 100%. Geoscientists must initiate shifting their minds, the minds of community from pessimistic disbelief to optimistic challenging issues of neo-deterministic hazard predictability. So I think it's... Thank you.
We have 5 minutes for discussion. Oops. Other question? I was surprised by several slides, of course, and including the one on the event of 2011. I didn't know that you have a publication where you are claiming you could have done better prediction, and that's what was done, yeah?
Yes, it's... You mean...
should be something from Elsevier, yeah.
You mean this one? You mean Tohoku earthquake?
Yeah.
So you can see on this slide the prediction which was on July 2010, and you can see that both territories, so the territory of the future mega earthquake offshore Maule, and the region where Tohoku earthquake happened are within those areas.
Okay.
So, and in fact, via this, say, scientific channels, we send this information to Japanese seismologists. So these predictions are released twice a year, and at the moment there is more than 150 seismologists and geophysicists who are so-called observers of the algorithm test. And the algorithm has been tested already for more than 20 years. So we started in 1992.
Okay. And another question, because you mentioned peer-backs, unified scaling. Can you say in very few words what it is? Because is it space and time at the same time and intensity, I believe?
No. You see, Perbach and Courses, so in 2002, they came with this name, Unified Scaling Law for Earthquake, came from the paper by Perbach. In fact, he was estimating not the number, but intervent time. And you understand that those are dual to each other. So so that's the reason that his paper, I think 2 papers, so they are sort of confirming this the results and suggestions which we did with Serik Mashkenov in late 80s.
Okay. Are there some other questions? Okay. If not, thank you very much. Okay. Oops. Okay, so the last talk is given by Charles Rouget. Whoops. I'm missing this. Towards a common formalization of resilience and vulnerability.
So, hello everybody. So first, I really appreciate the opportunity of to be here today to talk to you about resilience. In the talks before, we had related resilience to, for example, predictability, resilience as a buffer, or resilience and the role of informing the importance of informing social systems on their response. And what I'm going to try to do is I've proposed a formalization of resilience here with another concept of vulnerability to try and have base these discussions on resilience on non-ambiguous references, that is mathematical references. And another reason to do that is that people don't necessarily agree about what resilience is. For instance, here you have you have population, the curve of population following Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans, the population in the whole city of New Orleans, and you can see that, well, it decreased dramatically after the year the hurricane hit, but then it started recovering, and so a question, like assuming you can discuss the resilience of New Orleans based on its population, you have several questions that may come to mind. So, is resilience, can you think of it as recovery, like you're resilient when you get back to a given population level, and then is it like 350,000, is it 400,000, is it more? And then also, what would be the acceptable return times? For example, if we say it's 400,000, then New Orleans is going to be resilient when we get back to 400,000, and can we say, like, if it's not done by 2015, for example, then the resilience of the city is too low, or if it's, can we wait until longer? And then we can have a longer view on resilience. We can say, for example, well, there was a social breakdown following the hurricane, so maybe from this point of view, the city of New Orleans was not resilient to the hurricane from that view. Or we can even have a longer view and say, well, there is climate change that may cause sea level rise. In the same time, the Mississippi Delta, for lack of sediment, is going under the sea. So maybe the city is threatened by similar hurricanes in a more dramatic fashion in the future. So the resilience then is endangered in that way. So you have this very different interpretation that all come into play when you think about resilience of the same system to the same event. And then how we're going to articulate the talk is, first we're going to talk maybe about the resilience to a given event, like maybe kind of like the shorter view, and formulate 2 propositions that help formalize then resilience. And then in 2 and 3, we're going to take a longer view, have a more long-term view on resilience. Actually, I will not, maybe I will be very short on the third part because for the sake of discussion, I will shorten my talk a bit. So first, 2 propositions for formalizing resilience. First, we propose that like a very classical discrete time dynamical system formulation where you have a state at date t, and then you have decisions that you can take because when you talk about natural hazards, you often consider also a social system, and then you have uncertainties, and so that then the dynamic is going to update the state from stage t to the next stage. And well, there is this formal representation, and just to base the discussion, I'm going to, like, for example, keep on using the metaphor of resilience of an urban area to floods, where I'm not going to give specific equations, and it's more so as to more to showcase the role of this representation really as a thought experiment to try and discuss different elements related to well, this kind of system, this kind of events. So for example, here you may have state variables that may be population, there may be private property, public infrastructure, like maybe levees, maybe whatever, and then decision variables are what are you going to do to prevent flood or to better forecast floods, or to react better when a flood occurs. And then, of course, uncertainty may be mainly, well, like the occurrence of events, the frequency and magnitude, but also, well, other stuff that can happen linked with the social system, like maybe levee failure, maybe some problems that weren't expected when the evacuation plans are implemented, etc. So you have lots of systems, lots of things that are going to influence how the state trajectory is going to evolve. And then the second proposition is we say, well, we have the description of the system, and then when we talk about resilience, we talk about things we are interested in the system. For example, when we're talking about resilience of the soil to the droughts, we're talking about the resilience to the droughts. And what we propose is we're going to, in the state space, define the states that we think, that we are interested in. Lots of time they will be desirable, but you can also study the resilience of very undesirable things. For example, imagine you have poor people that live in the floodplain because, well, they have nowhere else to live. There is a flood. Well, if they still have nowhere else to live, they may return to the floodplain immediately afterwards. Then it may be like you can think that they're living in the floodplain as a very resilient state, but it's not a very desirable state, right? So, for example, here we're going to use, again, it's a very stylized example. It's just for the sake of discussion. Two state variables are going to be, for example, we're going to consider a levee, and then we're going to compare the levee height with the river stage and say, well, there is a flood when the river tops the levee. So the property of interest is going to be that levee height is greater than river stage, and then well, we could say at least 95%, 98% of the houses are fit to be inhabited. Well, ideally it's 100%, but for the sake of having like a set of properties, a constant state that is easier to see, I put 98%. So now we have this descriptive side of the representation, this normative side of the representation, and using the dynamical stochastic control dynamical system formulation, we're going to abstract one variable at a time to construct resilience and resilience indicators. So first, well, we have this representation that considers state at a given stage, but resilience, we're interested in the system's trajectory, right? So first, we're going to have this aggregation over time, and when you look at the resilience of the system, much like, for example, in Hurricane Katrina in the first slide, we looked at the post-event trajectory. So, for example, once we define the properties of interest of our system, the first question is, are we going to recover properties by reaching this set of by reaching this set K? If no, then we're not resilient. If yes, then there is resilience, and then you can say we're more or less resilient, and tune it in by using, for example, the recovery time. Does it take, if it's in weeks, does it take 5 weeks, 10 weeks? If it's in years, does it take 5 years, 10 years? Or also maybe the recovery cost. Was it costly, like in lives, in money, whatever measure you want to use? Well, so that's for one trajectory, but of course, for the same event, there may be several trajectories. For instance, still like a very hypothetical example, we have the state at the beginning, we have all the houses can be inhabited, and the levee is 5 meters above the river stage. Then a flood occurs, and well,
the river rises and rises, and at some point like goes over the levee, so we have a lot of damage, and then like the river recedes, and you recover, for example, after like say 10 weeks. That's the time unit doesn't really matter. It just again for the experiment. So that's one possibility, but maybe for this with the same flood, something unexpected may happen, like levee failures. Then you have a very much worse damage, and well, the situation is worse, so maybe then the recovery for the same event is going to be slower, and after 10 weeks you're not quite there, and you need like a couple of more weeks to get back to where your properties are respected. So you have different time or cost of recovery for both cases. You're going to say it's resilience, for instance. And well, then resilience, if you have access to some scenarios or some probabilities of these trajectories, is going to be something that you can derive from a probability distribution of these trajectories. So now, like, we get back to our systematic way of building indicators. We had first an aggregation through time, and then we have an aggregation over all uncertain scenarios, and that then we produce resilience indicators. For example, mean recovery time, the 95th percentile of recovery time, to have an idea of what bad case or worst case scenarios may be. And then once we get there, we can find, of course, discuss what are the best policies by now like abstracting over like the space of all your policies, that is a sequence of controls. What are the policies that make the indicators that better the value of the indicator you have chosen? So then you get there. So using both this descriptive descriptive representation and normative representation of your system, you have found a way. We found a way to step by step build a resilience indicator. Then by defining resilience, well, after an event occurs, as the ability to recover the properties. And of course, this representation, like the dynamical stochastic control dynamical system representation, also gives a way to abstract to aggregate by one variable at a time to eventually have a systematic way to build resilience indicators. And now we're going to try and take a longer view by saying, well, we have this trajectory where the levee was broken, and well, in the end we recover, but we have, because the levee was broken, we can recover by having, well, the levee is not as high as it was before, because maybe the top of the levee is broken, but still we recovered the properties. Does that mean we were resilient? Did we really recover when we think about it as we were before, because now it's easier to flood the city? Well, no, of course, and that means we not only wish to get back to a situation where your properties are met, you wish to get back to a situation where your properties, in a way, are going to be guaranteed. And when you think about guaranteed, it's like, for example, through a certain time. So that's where we get to something that we call the viability criterion, which comes from a control theory called viability theory that comes from the 1990s, where you have a system in a given state and you want to control it, so to keep it in a constraint set, for example, where your properties of interest are met. And so, for example, you say you have a state trajectory, you are at given initial state, you have a state trajectory that depends on the set of policies that you implement, your hydrological scenario, for example, like the time series of floods, of annual maximum flows that you have, and say, for example, from a date 2020 to a date 2100, and then your trajectory in that time range is going to be viable if you never leave the set where properties are met. So, for example, in our case, the river stage never overtops the levee, and so as a result, no house is made uninhabitable because of flooding. And so this theory was then extended to stochastic system, which we need when you talk about uncertain events like floods. And, well, for a trajectory, then we can say, is it a viable trajectory, depending on how we define our properties. And then when we account for all the trajectories, we can have, we can derive the probability of the viability criterion for a given initial state and for a given policy. And then you say, well, the properties of interest are going to be guaranteed in our time frame if this probability is going to be high enough. So you have to define like the time frame that you want and the probability that you want so that you guarantee your properties. So for example, I want it to be guaranteed 95% of the time, and that's how you define an object that's called a viability kernel. So it's a set of states where these properties are going to be guaranteed. So it's a set of states within K that define the properties that you're interested in going, because that means they're guaranteed. For example, here, now the green set where we want to go is not all of K. For example, if we said, well, our flooding risk is as low as we want it to be when the levee is at least 5 meters high, when the river stage is normal. Then if you're below, you're not in a situation that you like. So for example, your recovery property that you have here, now you get there, but you realize you didn't quite recover yet. You need to rebuild the levee. So it's kind of intuitive, but it means that you have to take into account both the short view of recovering and then the long view of recovering in a set where you know you're going to be in a good situation for a long time. So that's called that. So that means in our diagram for the resilience that we had the other time, the time now, instead of asking is the state in K, is it in the viability kernel of K? And then the resilience is going to be the return to the viability kernel. So that's something that the lab I was in for my PhD has been developing for quite a few years. So you have some references here. So now we change the definition of resilience to take into account different time scales. So for example, you have the shorter time scales for the recovery. You look at longer time scales for when you want to guarantee your properties. You're looking to look at weeks for recovery from flood, years for to be in a state that you like. And you do that using viability theory. Now, once you say that, you can say, for example, in the state of floods, the discussion can continue because you say, well, viability theory is kind of a stability property. And you can say, maybe it's not the best way all the time to think about flood risk, to build like very high levees, and because we know that people are going to go maybe build houses in the floodplains if there was no flood for 100 years, and then when the flood happens, you have tremendous consequences. So there may be other ways to think about guaranteeing the properties for a long time. And that's where vulnerability as a concept comes in. So I'm going to go quick on the concept because it's well, also for the sake of discussion. So vulnerability, well, it's another concept where you have a lot of conflicting definitions. Not conflicting, but somehow similar, but somehow different definitions, a little bit like resilience. And for example, there was a paper in Global Environmental Change in 2011 that summed it up by saying there is a Babylonian confusion surrounding the concept, and said, well, maybe the common denominator to all those definitions is that vulnerability is a measure of possible future harm, where you say harm is going to be, like the definition of properties of interest, a value judgment on the badness of a state. So the properties of interest then you can say may be guaranteed when, well, first they hold, and instead of saying we're in the viability kernel, now we can say, well, they hold when possible future harm, that is vulnerability, is going to be low. And then the rest of that section, but I'm going to go very quickly on, was to show that you can build vulnerability indicators using the same stochastic control dynamical system formulation. And And that, for example, one of these vulnerability indicators is the contrary of a viability indicator. So you're going to be vulnerable when you're not viable, and you're going to be viable when you're not vulnerable. So vulnerability is going to kind of extend this idea of viability to other type of measures. And it's really the same way to build indicator, except now you just consider like you define harm at a state. You say harm is 0 when within your set of property that you're interested in, and then it's greater than 0 outside of it. So I'm going to pass on the details, which mean, and then jump directly to the conclusions to say, really like the 2 points that I want to make with this presentation is formalization of vulnerability is a way to really help the discussion on the concept, and we propose to do it with by considering 2 sides that you really have to think about together. First is a description of your system, that is the dynamical system, for example, a dynamical system representation, but then you also have to think about which are the set of rules that you're interested in. For example, in the case of flood, you want to avoid flooding, or you want to avoid flooding damage, and so on. And you define really resilience with respect to this set of rules. And then, thanks to the system formulation, you can have a very systematic way to build indicators. And then you can also think about, you have 2 timescales that you have to consider is, when you think about natural hazard, the time scale of your natural hazard and this recovery to your natural hazard, and then the time scale of where you want to be after you recover, have a certain level of protection from this kind of natural hazard or the damage from it for a certain amount of time. And that's where I'm going to stop. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Now we can discuss about this complex question of defining resilience in more or less mathematical terms. There are 2.
Thank you for the very nice presentation. Now I'm interested to understand more what this viability theory is. I will have to read something because it was very quick. But do you think then that you can reconcile the 2 aspects, both resilience and vulnerability, under the umbrella of this theory? So it's the mathematical theory that you would use for quantify those 2 things that to me are always very qualitative.
Yeah. Well, actually, you of course, like I wanted to remain qualitative to really help understand that thinking about formalization doesn't mean you need to have the equations, that you need to have all the data, that it can still help you think about this concept. But then, well, viability is a way to say really like you're going to get to a set where going forward, you're in a situation that you like, and that your dynamic is going to keep you, or even with like the policy that you implement and the uncertainty that you have is going to give you a fair chance to be in a good state. And then, well, vulnerability, it's a little different because, well, you can think viability as a particular case of being contrary to vulnerability. I really went very quick on vulnerability. So really vulnerability is like whatever cost function you can think of in the future, and then it's more about thinking about the dynamical system formulation to have a systematic way of saying, you think about state, is it bad, is it good, or how bad is it, like for example, what's the amount of violation, and then you think about the whole trajectory and you aggregate your badness values, for example, your harm values on the whole trajectory, and then you think about all the trajectories, so then you have a distribution of harm values, and you have a statistic on them, and then you can discuss which policy is good for which indicators, etc. So it's pretty much like what the idea is about.
Okay, thank you. I've got a quick question about how I understand the difference between this viability and vulnerability, and I'm not sure if it's my understanding or if something is not coming across right to me. The vulnerability is a concept where you try to keep the possibility for future harm low. And
Yeah.
this is so this is expressed in a probabilistic way. But your viability theory has a concept where you guarantee the persistence of these properties of interest, and that guarantee seems to have a high level of certainty, as a full certainty, as opposed to the possibility that you implement in the vulnerability approach. So I'm just wondering, is that guarantee, is that like 100% guarantee that yes, those properties will be retained in the future without any, well, basically rephrase, why is there no possibility error or minimization function in there?
I think what you should keep in mind is that, well, it's a way, when you think about, well, the viability kernel, for example, you set a threshold of what you want this probability to be above a certain threshold, but you're free to set the threshold. Of course, when you think about viability, it will be maybe counterintuitive to say, well, we want it to be like, we want to have a 50% chance, only like a 20 or 50% chance to have zero flood during 8 years. You think more about intuitively like something like 1995, but for example, for floods, then you say, for example, I want no floods to overtop my levee for 80 years with a 95% probability. You will have a very, very long return period of the flood you want to protect again. It will be more than a 1,000-year flood. So I would say, yeah, you need to modulate your probability depending on what level of risk you want to hedge against.
So the guarantee is within a certain confidence bound of risk that you're willing to accept?
Yeah, it's something that is up to discussion. Like it's a little bit like at the beginning when you define the properties. It's kind of a norm that you define. What are you interested in? And then you have to define, in fact, another norm to say, how do I want to guarantee these properties? Pretty much. Thank you.
I just want to point out that, not any occurrence of the hazard would lead to disaster and would require any resilience. Mm-hmm. And I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding in this terminology. So we have hazard, we have object of risk, then we have some convolution of those two to obtain risk. And so if a disaster, so this occurrence of this convolution of the object of risk and hazard occur, then you get a disaster, and then you have this resilient stuff. So I think that this should be somehow incorporated, and this issue of resilience should consider this concept of risk.
Yeah, in fact, I agree with what you say. It's just like, I for example, gave the example of a flood that overtops the levee, but you can consider a flood that doesn't overtop the levee, and you're in fact resilient to this flood because, well, you don't lose the property of interest. So by definition, you're resilient. But of course, you talk more about the events where something bad happens, because as long as it doesn't happen, there's less to maybe worry about. But I agree that two types of events are important.
If there is no other question, I have a small comment, a question in a given way. I think what is, with the variability theory, there is something else which is added, is the possibility of action. So you are trying to follow all possible trajectories, including depending on actions. And that's, in a way, innovative, but very complex, so for sure, due to the fact that it could be many different actions. Okay, so to follow all the trajectories is really a difficult task. And second, I think that where there is the most important debate about that is whether we accept or not that the trajectory could be extremely risky, facing very drastic event or not. And I remember at the time that Aubin, who is more or less the father of variability theory, was really excluding any risk. In fact, he wanted to have a deterministic point of view about trajectories. Well, if you are looking in a stochastic manner, I suppose that you are allowing some unfriendly events, but after that you would like that the trajectory will come back to the safety domain in a way. Is it more or less a big difference between the stochastic approach with respect to the deterministic approach of variability?
Yeah, it's, well, in fact, this framework with resilience and variability was first developed without stochasticity, so you just have an event that changes your state. It's kind of like a something external to your system, changes your state, and then you want to recover. And in the case of a deterministic viability, you can remain like forever inside of your viability kernel, and don't leave, in fact, the viability kernel. In the case of stochastic viability, you always have a chance to leave the set of properties, even without considering very extreme events, and you don't have a very strong, you don't have the stability property that viability is supposed to be. You have a policy that you're going to remain that same set, and you lose this stability property when you think about stochastic viability. So that's a big difference. And then maybe to comment on your policy remark, yeah, it's really like the first. Well, this dynamical system formulation says even though you don't consider explicitly what your actions are, just saying, well, you have decisions. Say, well, even if you don't consider them explicitly, you know that this set of things that you implement, even if it's not in a discussion, maybe should be like to improve resilience, to improve to improve your situation to extreme events.
Okay. Is there any other question? I think it's. Oh, there is one. Oh, Chandra.
Can you go to one of the first slides, please? I've been struggling. I'm trying to understand this, and
I don't know you. Sorry, I don't know you. Go back. Oh, okay. So I just. So which?
Just keep going, and yeah, just stop at any of these, and take this case, and. Anything resilient, the way I've been struggling with this thing, anything is resilient to a level of, for lack of a better term, attack.
Sorry, can you tell?
Oh, sorry. Anything I can think of resilience is resilient to a level of attack or a level of disturbance.
Sure.
I can be resilient to 100 millimeter per hour rainfall, but I may not be resilient to 8 million hours per hour rainfall. And that concept, I couldn't find it as the forcing the attack function in any of these definitions. So I'm struggling with that.
One way to first the equation that you have, just like the description of the system is not. Inside you can include, for example, W can be, the rainfall amount, and then it can be probabilistic. So you may have a probability of your attack. But then when you talk about resilience, you can just place yourself, after the event occurs, you say, okay, this thing occurs, and then, for example, the probability of your 1 meter per hour rainfall, you're going to set it to 1 in the first time step, and you see what's happening. So it just... the idea just to give a framework where you can set any kind of system description, any kind of event, you just plug them into your system, and that's just a description. It's not it's not prescriptive of what you can include or not in your scenarios.
No, I'm not even concerned about the probability of the level of attack, but I'm talking about resilience to the level. It may or may not happen, but I'm resilient to a certain level of attack. That's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, I mean, you mean like, for example, you would say after a certain level of rainfall, you say you're not resilient anymore. Is that what you mean?
I build a 10 10-meter seawall, so long the attack is less than 10 meters, I'm very safe, I'm resilient, I don't change my way of life. And
first, I would say, like, well, okay. Then it's maybe a play on the word, but according to the according to the definition proposed, it's more about recovery. So maybe if you have this flood, the question, well, then you can say, for example, I'm going to be vulnerable to this flood because there's going to be damage. But the question is then, can you pump out the water and can you start over, or are you going to be flooded forever? That's more like where I would think resilience is. Maybe it's a little different play on the word, but to me what's important is more which concept you consider as like, resilience is about maybe some kind of reversibility as well. The way we see it in there.
You know, very in line with your concept. So last November, I was asked to comment on the plan of emergency management ministry, and I was searching the word probability in that document, and it does not exist there. So, which means that what they need the level of acceptable loss. And from that, you come to resilience, and from that, you come to this thing. So I think that we should switch our minds from, say, probability of occurrence, but, you know, to the level of acceptable losses for the certain object of risk.
So maybe what you mean is like you would say resilience would be like recovery, but with a constraint on the cost. Yeah, yes. That's something that I didn't want to maybe to make it too much, but maybe that's also what you meant a little bit. Like you are resilient until maybe like a certain recovery time. Maybe if you say, okay, it's going to take me 20 years to recover, then I'm not interested in that.
Actually, that's what I was meaning was, I'm resilient in the sense, some things come and hit me. If I'm resilient to a certain level of attack, it doesn't even bother me. I just keep going on with my life. So there are places where they build seawalls to a certain level of tides, nothing happens. Just life goes on. Yeah, that's resilient.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I guess it's more a vocabulary thing. It just, to me, well, to us in this framework, there are just two things that then we can call them different ways. But there is one is, are you going to be hit by the perturbation or not? And then if you're hit, can you recover? So you have two different things. And then I guess you can give them different names depending on the cases. But it's pretty much what...
I'm engaging because I'm very happy to see these equations, and right. I was relating it to my users where they said that you make a prediction, then based on that the traffic will get rerouted and people just go on, and as far as they are concerned everything is transparent. They would not even know. My users call that as resilient to the attack from storms. And I was just thinking about it that way.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, I think we have to close the session, maybe not the discussions. Okay, so we can discuss more about that. By the way, two of you are going to a dinner, so those people who are, the other people who are interested to go on discussing, it's a dinner for the NP, for nonlinear processes in geophysics. So those who are interested to go there, they can come and I will give you the indication where to go. It's, I believe, at 8 o'clock, something like that. Okay. So to finish this session, of course, we will applaud all the speakers and also the very good question asked by the attendants.